Hello, my name is Jean-Karl Soler, and on behalf of the Battlefront Living History Group, I'd like to invite you to this series about the standard German rifle for the Second World War. And straight away, I'm showing you an example of the Karabiner 98 Kurz, or the 98 in referring to 1898, but I'll get into that part of the story later. The rifle was actually adopted for service in 1934, and it was produced up to 1945 in over 14.5 million examples. It was based on a long series of Mauser rifles going back to the 19th century, and these rifles were known for their accuracy. And it was based on a system which is a bolt action rifle. So you have the bolt here, which is locked when you close it. It's locked with 3 lugs, which gives a lot of strength. You had the accurate Mauser manufactured barrel, and you had the sights usually mounted. We'll see different examples mounted on top of the barrel. These were extremely accurate rifles. They were fed with a magazine which was incorporated within the rifle, within the stock, and it took 5 rounds. It was loaded with a stripper clip of 5 rounds, and it would feed from the top over here. Other characteristics of the rifle, you had the barrel band here, which had there was a bayonet lug where you would fit the bayonet. This was a standard which was carried over from the First World War, but even in the Second World War, it was considered useful. The bayonet was still considered useful. And the rifle also had a cleaning rod, which was short. You had to put 3 cleaning rods together from 3 separate rifles to have enough length to clean out the barrel. This particular example also has the barrel protector. And there is another interesting feature, but I'll talk about that later. You see that it has the standard sling, which was standard for all K98s, and you had this metal cone on the stock, which also helped when taking down the rifle to actually take down the bolt. The rifle was the graduation of the sight. This is the rear sight, which then you link up with the sight picture on the front sight to line up the rifle. You could calibrate it from 100 meters up to 2 kilometers, but it was expected to be accurate up till about 500 meters. Many of the early rifles had markings on the other side of the sight leaf to allow you to even set the distance even when lying down on the ground. So the magic of video, we've changed rifle and to demonstrate a point. This is the Gewehr 98. So this 98 means 1898. So this was adopted by the German army in 1898 to take the smokeless 8x57, or more precisely 7/7.92 by 57 bullet. So 8x57 millimeter bullet, 8mm caliber, 57 length. And this was the standard bullet which was used by the German army from the First World War through to the Second World War and beyond, until the NATO times. So the 8x57, the ball cartridge, the S cartridge, the designers of that bullet thought that it needed a long barrel, and the rifle, the standard rifle for the First World War, the G98, was a long barreled rifle. So you needed the long barrel to get the maximum energy out of the cartridge. It had this sight, the roller coaster sight mounted on top of the barrel, different from what was adopted in the Second World War. And this is an Amberg 1900 rifle. You can see it's got the same type of bolt with 3 lugs, but this has a bolt handle which is sticking out, and also the arrangement for the sling was different, but it looks quite similar. However, an interesting thing is that this was obviously rather ungainly because it's so long in the trench warfare of the First World War, which led to an interesting development. So again, the magic of video, another rifle. This is similar to the Gewehr 98, the long rifle, but this is shorter, and this is because this was designed for applications where a shorter rifle, a more handy rifle, would be more useful. So it was maybe for horse-mounted troops, or for troops that had to put the firearm over their shoulders when, for example, transporting artillery pieces or doing other jobs which the primary role was not that of the front-line soldier. But it was found to be more useful in close-range combat because it is shorter and more compact. Furthermore, the fear that the S bullet, the ball, standard ball cartridge, would become underpowered or inaccurate because the barrel now was shorter, proved to be incorrect. And in fact, these rifles with the shortened barrel were still quite accurate. The sights of this 98A are in fact quite similar to the model now, different from the roller coaster of the previous rifle, the 1898 model, which was used in the First World War. This was also used in the First World War, but the sights are more similar to the K98, the carbine the German army used in the Second World War. And the bolt again now has the turned down handle, and it's the same type of bolt with the same type of internal magazine, so not much has changed. Unfortunately, I don't have a sling for this rifle, but otherwise this rifle is complete, including with its muzzle cover. And back again to the K98K, the star of the show. So we talked about the First World War and the development of the bullet, which then led to the 1898 rifle. Then there was a carbine version which was found to be almost as accurate but more handy, and then you had the 1934 rifle, which more or less developed directly into the K98, again adopted in 1934. So the characteristics of the rifle, I think we've mentioned before. It takes the 8x57 or 7.92x57 bullet, which was accurate to beyond 500 meters. The sights were graduated out to 2 kilometers, but it really was expected to be effective up to about 500 meters. You had the tangent sight, which was the leaf sight, which was considered to be more practical than the roller coaster of the 1898. You had the bayonet mount, you had the short cleaning rod, the sling swivel, the sling as I explained before, and you had the famous bolt, which more or less hardly changed except for the turning down of the handle from the 1898 of the First World War to the K98K of the Second World War. And this was the three-lug proven system, which even today is used in hunting rifles, big bore hunting rifles. So interestingly, these rifles were very carefully marked. So Mauser was the lead production. So Mauser in Neckar, Oberndorf on the Neckar. But this particular rifle is marked 243, which means it was made by Mauser in Borsigwalde. It's got some interesting markings. We actually purchased this rifle for reenactment purposes, but then we realized that this was quite a special rifle. So let's talk about the characteristics. You had always a wooden stock, which was found to be the best. There was a test on Bakelite stocks during the Second World War. They were not found to be as good. So you had solid stocks at the early part of the war, laminated stocks later on, but the design hardly changed. What happened later on in 1945, you had the Kriegsmodell. 1944-45 you had the Kriegsmodell, which was the simplified version where they had some stamped metal parts to simplify production. There was a bit of a change in the manufacturing of the bolt. It was simplified slightly to bring down the costs and to increase the rate of production because of the problems at the end of the war. But what I'd like to show, and I'm sure it will now appear on the video, is the markings on the little cone I talked about in the stock, the metal cone inserted in the stock, which served for takedown of the bolt. So it pressed the bolt against it to decock it or cock it as necessary, and it was helpful in taking down of the rifle. but this particular cone has specific markings. And the markings are a number, which starts with an N, then there's a number, and the serial number of the rifle is 8482, and it's the same on all the parts of the rifle. But the number on this cone is different, and it starts with an N. And the reason is that this is a rifle which was adopted by the Kriegsmarine. So this was a Navy adopted rifle, and these rifles were usually carried on larger ships, specifically for specific duties, like for example shooting at mines, to detonate a mine which had been identified, or for general purpose whenever a rifle was used. So this is actually a Marine K98K, because the K98 was used in all branches of the German army, with the exception to some degree of the parachute troops that usually had their procurement differently, and possibly the SS, certain units in the SS. But mostly this was the general rifle for the German army, and that's why over 14.5 million of these units were produced. So I think I've shared my enthusiasm about this rifle with you, and I thank you for watching.